Did you make an appointment with her? Okay. Who is your counselor? Okay. If she's not down there, I want you to feel like you can sit down there until you need to come back upstairs. Okay. Thank you, sweetie. You're fine. Okay, that's fine, honey. All right. So we're on page 8. Page 8. Let's talk about linear regression. All right. So linear regression. In the last lesson, we drew lines of best fit by hand so we could model bivariate data. Someone tell me what bivariate is. We learned it yesterday. What does bivariate data mean? It's just data that has two variables. One doesn't cause the other. It's not like an input X creates an output Y. It's just two variables. So yesterday we graphed bivariate data, right? And made a scatter plot. Today we're going to see how our calculators help us find the equation of the line of best fit. Okay. We're going to work the first exercise with a data set from the last lesson. So this was the data set that we used in our first lesson yesterday. Temperature, low temperatures and high temperatures. Okay. So here's what everybody needs to do. In your calculator, the first thing that I want you to do is press your window button. So it's the second gray button right next to y equals. Does everybody see it? Up at the top, you have y equals, and then right next to it, you have a button that says window. Okay, so your window button. The first thing that it asks you for is your x min. Do you guys see that? Well, what's our lowest x value on our table? So we're going to set our minimum at 20. We don't want the graph to show anything lower than 20 on the x-axis. What's our x maximum? What's the highest value on our graph, on our table? 45. So we're going to set it at 50. We don't want anything greater than 50. So x min is 20. X max is 50. All right. Now we're going to go down, arrow down to the y minimum. Do you guys see that? What is our minimum value on our y? So how about if we set our y minimum at 45? And what is our maximum value on our y? So let's set it at 75. So 45 and 75. This is going to make it so when we make our scatter plot, it's right in our face. Like we can see it perfectly. Okay. So we're going to use our calculator to input this data. So the first thing that I want you guys to do after you get your table straight, your windows straight, is press the stat button on your calculator. It's right here, the stat button. You see it? Press the stat button. Okay. And it's going to give us an edit button. We're going to edit our stat. We're going to hit enter, like hit the enter button so we can edit. And it's going to give us a bunch of lists. It says L1, L2. If you guys don't see that, raise your hand so I can help you. You don't see L1, L2. So stat button. So adjusted your window. So now you're going to hit your stat button. You're going to hit edit. Your L1. So your L1, your lists need to be cleared. If they're not cleared, does anyone have data in their lists? Does anyone have data in their L1, L2? Because if you do, you need to clear it out or it'll mess up your table. Okay. So if you have data in your list, you need to arrow up to where it says L1. You don't have any data in there. Anybody have data in their lists? What? Okay, so you have to hit edit, right? There you go. All right. So L1 is going to be all of our X values. L1 is going to be all of your X values. Okay. So we're going to start inputting our X values. 26, enter. 28, enter. 30, enter. 32, enter. 34, enter. 35, enter. 37, enter. 38, enter. 41, enter, and 45. Raise your hand if you were not able to enter your data from your L1 for your X values. What do you got? Okay. Weird stuff going on in there? Okay. So now our L2, what do you think we're going to put in the L2? The Y values. 49, enter. 50, enter. 57, enter. 54, enter. 60, enter. 58, enter. 64, enter. 66, enter. 63, enter. And 72. Okay. All right. If you press your second button and Y equals above this Y equals, do you guys see where it says stat plot written in blue? Right above your Y equals, do you see where it says stat plot? So we want to get to the stat plot. We want it to plot our statistics. So we have to hit the second button and Y equals. The second button and Y equals. And you're going to check, like hit the zoom button. Hit your zoom button and go down to number 9. So zoom button down to number 9 and it'll plot your scatter plots. So arrow down, hit it, enter. Can I see your windows really fast?
It's empty.
Yep, second Y equals, and then we're gonna hit zoom. You go down to number 9. Oh, you're so okay. All right. If some of you guys have an error, it means that we have to insert your calculator. It should show something like this. Okay. No, you don't have it. That's fine. Okay. I'm going to show you a different way. Just don't even worry about it. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to split our screen because you don't have a graphing calculator at home anyway. So we're going to go to Desmos. I'm going to do this one with you, and then the next one you can do on your own. So do you guys know how to make a table appear in Desmos? How do I get a table to come up in Desmos? I press the plus and I choose table. Okay. So I have to input my X values again. So if someone could rattle them off for me, that would be great. That's it? 45? Okay. Will you do the Y's for me, please? And thank you, sir. Okay. So once I do that, I want to have a scatter plot. So I do Y1 because Y equals, and this is the Y1 table. That's why I use Y1. And then I use this squiggly line on my keyboard right below exit. Do you guys see the exit button on your keyboard? It's that squiggly line. It's the Spanish tilde. So you hit that little squiggly line, AX1, because the X values are X sub 1 plus B. And when I do that, it plots all of my points. So here's my scatter plot. Here's my scatter plot for me, but it doesn't just plot my points. Once I input that equation in, it draws my line of best fit for me. So there's my scatter plot, and there's my line of best fit. Okay. So question number 1 says, what is the equation for your line of best fit? So let's look at our equation for our line of best fit from the Desmos. So in Desmos, our equation, remember, is we just typed in Y equals AX plus B. So A is my slope. What is my slope value from my table, from my equation on Desmos? Do you guys see it? It's 1.16. So y equals 1.16x plus, what is my y-intercept? Well, that's the B value. 19. It says make your y-intercept to the nearest integer, so we're just going to leave it as 19. What was our slope? What was our slope from our original activity? Well, when we did this in notes yesterday in our lesson, we had a slope of 5/4 when we did this in class, like when we graphed it ourselves, which is 1.25. So how close was our slope yesterday, 1.25, compared to the slope we actually got from the computer today? It's pretty close, right? We're not going to be off a whole bit, not unless the numbers get really big, okay? Explain why the y-intercept of this model explain what it represents in terms of the low and high temperatures that are being modeled with the problem. So tell me when the y-intercept happens. The y-intercept happens when x equals 0, right? So our y-intercept is the order pair 0, 19. So what does that represent in terms of the context of this problem? Well, the x values are our low temp. So sorry, it won't let me write unless I make it gigantic. So when the low temp is 0, when my low temp is 0, my high temp is 19. How would you interpret the slope of this model in terms of how the low and the high temperatures change? Well, remember our slope, 1.16. That's your change in y over your change in x, which is 1. So it means that the high temp, it's positive, so that means it increases by 1.16 degrees with every degree increase in the low temp. So our high temp increases by 1.16 degrees with every degree increase in our low temperature. Okay. For the next one, you guys are going to build your tables in Desmos. So I want everyone to go to Desmos, or at least one person at your table go to Desmos. One person at your table go to Desmos. I'll wait for you. Yeah, you can. I don't care. Justice, do you care? Noah comes and stands by you while you go to Desmos.
So after you finish my regression, you should be involved. I get called on my
Okay, listen up. So let's go to the next one. I'm gonna split the screen again. Everyone get to Desmos graphing, or at least one person at your table. You have to know how to do this. You need to know how to do this. It's really important. Okay. So a word of advice: when you have a table and you've already created a line of regression, you need to delete it before you input a new table, right? Otherwise, you have to change your equation to y sub 2, x sub 2. If you don't delete that value, if you don't delete your table, your Desmos doesn't recalculate. It still in its brain has that back information running. Okay. So tell me again, how do I have a table pop itself up if I'm using, how do I get a table to come up? Press the plus button. Okay, so we're going to press table. So our number 2 question has weights and mileage. The weights are going to represent the X values. Are one of you in Desmos? Who's in Desmos? Okay. So the weights are going to represent the X values. So like if one person's typing, the other person call off the points for them, okay? Got it? So input your data. Just see where you are? Right here. No. You're supposed to be up here. You're supposed to be up here. I don't need you filled out notes so you can copy them for you to have. But up here, you're calling off the points for Justice, and he is putting them in. That's what I asked you to do. Stand up here. You said you were working with him. Let's go. That's what we're doing. You have to work with someone. You have to see what it looks like. Okay? Once you get your points plotted, you should be able to see your scatter plot. You should be able to see your scatter plot. Okay? I want to show you, for those of you that are just kind of chilling out watching, you guys have a little gear, like it looks like a little wrench in the top right of your Desmos. Do you see that? You can adjust your X max and mins. So I want my X axis minimum to be 3. And I want my X maximum to be 10. And I want my Y minimum to be 20. No, not 20. How about 15? My Y minimum is going to be 15 and my Y maximum is going to be 50. So when you do that, it puts your graph right there for you. Okay, you don't have to do that, but I want you to know that you can. So how do we get our equation? Because it says find the equation. Does anyone remember how to do that? So, actually, no, we're going to let the calculator do it all for us. So we're going to go to the you're going to go to the next tab in Desmos right below your table. You're going to do Y1. Why are we choosing Y1? Because all of our Y values are labeled Y1. They're going to hit shift and the button right below the escape. It's that little squiggly, the Spanish tilde. AX1 plus B. And that will give you your equation. So making that nice and big so you can see it. Making that nice and big so you can see it. That's what you're typing in to get that equation. Y sub 1 equal, or tilde AX1 plus B. So we have to find the equation for our line of best fit. What's our equation going to be? What's the value of A? What did we get for A? 7.58. I got A equals negative 8.09. Is that what you got? Okay, that's our A value. Actually, I think, does it ask us to round to the nearest tenth? I'm going to leave it just like that. If you didn't get that, one of your points are wrong, okay? B is 68. We're going to just let B equal 68. So what is our equation? Our equation is Y equals negative 8.09x plus 68. Plus 68. This is the equation. So we've already created our graph. It says, would you consider the correlation between the weight and the mileage to be positive or negative? It's just asking you, what is your correlation? Well, look at your slope. Is your slope positive or negative? It's negative. And when you look at your graph, hopefully you see that your graph is also negative, right? Did you guys see that your graph is negative, has negative slope? I can't pull it up, but yes. So this is going to be negative. Explain. Well, my slope is negative. That's all you need to say. If your slope is negative, then your correlation is going to be negative. Which parameter? Which parameter? Parameters are the two, like the parameters are the two things that we're discovering, right? The two things that we're finding from our equation. So our parameters, when we put this in, are A, which is really my slope, and B, which is my y-intercept. So when it's asking you about the parameters, it's asking you what two values or what values are you looking at to create your equation. Well, we're looking at the slope and the y-intercept. It says which of those parameters of the linear model predicts whether your correlation is going to be positive or negative. Is it the y-intercept that tells us if we're going to have positive or negative correlation, or is it our slope? It's our slope. Yeah, we've said that like 100 times, but let's write it down. It's the slope. The slope determines our correlation. The slope determines our correlation. Okay. The next question is about a car weight. So I'm going to go back up to the table. The question says, if I had a car that weighed 4,300 pounds or 4,300 pounds, how do I represent a car? It's going to be an X value. How do I represent X when it's 4,300 pounds? Look at your table. How does your table represent your X values? It says specifically something about your table, about your X's. What does it say right here? Yeah. So the weight of your car is divided by 1,000. So when I see 3.7, that's 3.7 times 1,000 or 3,700 pounds, 4,500 pounds. So how do I represent a car that has a weight of 4,300 pounds? 4.3. Exactly. So that means that X is going to equal 4.3. And we're putting it into our linear model. We're putting it into that equation that we wrote. So our equation, y equals negative 8.09x plus, I thought it was 68. Okay, plus 68. So in my calculator, I'm going to take negative 8.09 times 4.3 plus 68. And that should give me a Y value, which is miles per gallon. So tell me what you get when you do that. $33 point what? So 33.21. So it says to round to the nearest integer. So we're probably getting 33 miles per gallon. Because the heavier your car is, the lower your fuel efficiency is. Does that make sense? The heavier the car, the lower the fuel efficiency is. So if I wanted to purchase a car that got 40 miles to the gallon, what would the weight be? What is it asking me to do? If I'm purchasing a car that gets 40 miles per gallon, well, this is telling me what you want your output to be. I want Y to equal 40. So when I write my equation, I start with the 40. 40 equals negative 8.09x plus 68. Now we're trying to figure out what the weight of the car is. How am I going to use that equation to figure out what the weight of the car is? How am I going to do that? What are we thinking? Ideas? Anyone? No? How am I going to solve for x? That's what it's asking me to do. How am I going to solve for x? How am I going to solve for x? I hear some of you whispering about it. We're going to subtract 68 first. Let's do that. Let's subtract 68 from both sides. So when I subtract 68, I get negative 28 equals negative 8.09x. Now what? Yeah, we divide both sides by negative 8.09. So 28 divided by negative 8.09 equals x. What do you get? You don't get a negative because you have a negative divided by a negative. So you get 3.4 what? 3.4. Is it just exactly 3.4? Okay, so give me like one more decimal place. Huh? 3.46. Okay. So remember, this is the weight of my car in the, like this number has been divided by 1,000. So if I want to know the actual weight of the car, I have to take it and multiply it by 1,000, which means I'm going to move the decimal place 4 times. 3,460. It says to give me the weight of the car to the nearest 100 pounds. To the nearest 100 pounds. What is that? Yeah. So we're looking for a car. We want a car that weighs about, I'm going to use the squiggly, 3,500 pounds. God bless you. We want a car that weighs about 3,500 pounds. We want a car that weighs about 3,500 pounds. You have 2 questions for your homework. Both of them require you to use Desmos. You're going to build your table into Desmos, create an equation, and answer the questions. Okay? 2 questions. 2 questions. I want everyone to do both questions. I'm not minimizing. We only have 2 questions.